Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice, and good afternoon to the Commission.
How are you?
It's a big question.
It is.
Trepidation and hopeful, and I think alive, really.
Yeah, alive.
Yes.
Well, this is not your first time here, so you have no doubt that you're going to do just fine. Shall we start?
Yes, we may. Thank you,
All right.
Chief Justice.
Yours is not the usual application. You are not here to be vetted on your competence to become a judge. You are already a senior judge who seeks a lateral transfer to another division for personal reasons that are known to this body. And you were actually interviewed by this body not so long ago for a position at the Supreme Court of Appeal. So we have your transcript in our pocket. We have a very fair idea of who you are and what you are capable of. So I'll just zoom in on the highlights of your very extensive CV.
Thank you.
You have a number of academic qualifications, 3 degrees, social work honors, and an LLB from the University of Cape Town. All 3 of them? No, sorry.
No,
2 of them.
2. The first 2 from the University of Cape Town, and the LLB from
UK's again.
Yes,
Now.
Durban campus.
Yes.
Howard Natal as it then was.
Mm-hmm. And you also have a certificate, a global faculty development certificate from Wharton Business School at the University of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And you are an accredited IMSA holding a certificate from that, an arbitration certificate from that body.
Yes.
Okay. You interned at CALS in the very beginning of your legal career and then did articles and worked your way up to finally having your own law practice.
Yes.
And you did your articles with Cheryl Thompson and Tyson?
That is correct, Chief Justice.
And at some stage, you were a director at one of the biggest commercial law firms in the country, Cliff Decker.
That was towards the end of my foray, doing my own gig, I shall say. Yes.
And you were appointed to the bench from that law firm, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
And that was in 2017.
January 20th, 2017, Chief Justice, yes.
And appointed to the Gauteng Division of the High Court.
That is correct, Chief Justice.
And after your appointment as a judge, you had occasion to work at the Special Investigation Unit Tribunal.
Yes, at the establishment phase, yes.
That was between 2019 and 2022.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of work did the tribunal do?
Well, it was specifically set up to recover monies which had been misappropriated. But at the early stages, obviously, the referrals and the work was slow, and we had to set up a management system and structure for which to operate, including the rules for the tribunal and the like, and do a lot of coordination between the hearing of the matters, getting them case managed for hearing with the SIU investigating team. Because even though they had a whole list of matters, it didn't mean that they were ready for adjudication at the time. So there was a lot of groundwork going on behind the scenes to get the matters ready.
You've acted at the Competition Appeal Court as well.
Yes, I have.
Had a number of stints there. Did you manage to write any judgment?
Yes, I did.
Oh, how many?
I did. I did. I'll tell you, I think most people are not aware because the Competition Appeals Court is not a full-time court. What happened is at the end of the tenure of the previous presidency, there was almost like a gap, and matters come on an ad hoc basis as and when they are ready for hearing. And so you don't have a deluge of matters on demand for hearing. For example, the 1 year I was appointed, but I only got to hear a matter once at the end of the year, which means there wasn't a demand for matters to be heard. So when people come and they have maybe 1 or 2 judgments having said it's not because of anything, just that there isn't sometimes as much a demand as to warrant a full-time court. So that's sometimes behind it. I've written 3 judgments for the court, and I hope to write some more.
Also, you are still interested in...
I love the work. I think I've also just recently, I've been asking them to make sure that it's published. I've just completed, but it's not for the competition court, but it overlays both administrative law and competition law issues involving market regulation of the mobile telecommunications market. It should be out in the market by now for critique.
Yeah. You acted at the Supreme Court of Appeal for a year?
Yes, I did.
How did you find it there?
You know, Chief Justice, the intellectual rigor of the work appeals to me. It truly, really does. And the advantage of being at the appellate court is that you get your records on time, and your work is really structured because you know exactly what you're going to be dealing with when the term starts. So if you were prepared and you use your time wisely, barring the interruption of the petitions, which obviously take precedent during the time of preparation, it's really very interesting work. And so, yeah, I like to be intellectually challenged. And so I found it particularly stimulating and interesting from that point of view.
I know that you wrote a number of judgments for that court. How many in all?
I did write 8 of my own. And I had one where I was assigned scribe with another colleague. And I wrote 3 dissenting judgments. One was not material, but it dealt with what subsequently the Constitutional Court referred to as a slap suit. And I think the other dissenting judgment I dealt with involved a tender involving Transnet, and whether I think the dispute centered on a narrow issue of whether or not the tender should be declared invalid and set aside. And the majority of the panel took a different view, and I, as a scribe for the minority, obviously took a different view because I was leaning on my experience around infrastructure procurement. Here, the other party delivered a fence which was not specified. And it centered on the diameters of the fence that was eventually installed, which was not ordered by Transnet. And when you've done PPP work and other work, there's what in the public procurement space called value for money. That unless you have determined cumulatively what the impact of all of that was and whether Transnet got value for money, in my mind, the tender was irregular and it felt to be set aside. Because you can absolutely maximize on the margin by just delivering just a little bit less than what is specified. But cumulatively, it has an impact on the price paid. So I dissented on that one, and I co-wrote with a colleague a dissenting judgment involving the Consumer Tribunal and the liquidators. I think that judgment is before the Constitutional Court now to resolve, from what I can remember. And I think the JSC did pick up the one other dissenting judgment of whether or not the appeal was properly before the court. Whilst the majority went against me, and the senior judge Van der Merwe and I took the view that the judgment is a nullity, I learned later that in fact the majority judgment was set aside, which was rather quite surprising and soon, which in effect affirmed the minority judgment I had written.
Yes. You've done a lot of things. I just
The way you say it.
Just thinking about it. But you are considered a premier expert on corporate governance issues. Just a little bit on that.
Well, maybe I should now say, now that I've spent 8 years and 8 months on the bench, maybe let me make it historical and say I was, right? I was. And I was an expert in the area. And governance is about how institutions are led and directed. And it combines a clear understanding of the regulatory framework within which the institution operates, and it calls for a proper distillation of what that framework means in terms of both leadership and governance, and setting up systems of, we don't talk compliance anymore, we talk conformance, which means what measures are there or created to ensure that the system not only complies, but performs on some of the key deliverables, which are almost invariably regulated by law. So part of my work was to translate legal principles into behaviors and systems of governance. And working with some of the listed majors, I worked with some of the boards, again, the listed majors, to help the board evaluate its performance within the regulatory framework, and as part of the culture of continual improvement. And I learned a lot from that work. I learned a lot.
Any of it relevant for what you're doing now?
Well, I think what it does is that it gives me insight. You know, some litigation comes before us, and it gives me deep insight into what the driver of the litigation is, and what's the underbelly that informs the litigation, and sometimes what strategy is that informs the litigation. And I see that sometimes there is a disconnect between, for example, what the company espouses as values and what is brought before court. And it assisted me a lot around contract law and around company law.
All right. I'm not going to get into all the bodies, legal and otherwise, in which you've
Yes.
been involved. Your CV is there, speaks for itself. I will just mention your involvement in judicial training of aspirant judges,
Yes.
both here at home and regionally and globally, not so.
Well, not globally. I think,
What's your involvement with the United Nations?
well, I was the representative, local representative of the United Nations Global Compact in South Africa, which looks at the full value of what has come to known as sustainability. And that includes environmental governance and social governance.
And you've done a lot of work with SAJE, the
Yes,
South
I
African
did
Judicial
until
Education
recently.
Institute, yes,
Until recently,
and
yes.
the African Regional Judges Forum.
Yes.
One of the law bodies who've commented on your application worries that you might not cope with the workload of this division to which you apply. And I smiled to myself. You're a judge of the Johannesburg High Court, not so, where the working pace is frenetic, I'm told. So you used to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I didn't know how to I didn't know how to receive the comment because I mean soon after my surgery, I was off from June and September. Even though I was given a dispensation to work from home, I was full on. I know that my JP had said, look, we will try and ease you slowly so that you can, have time to heal. I think the judgments themselves and the roster itself speaks to the fact that I was not spared. So I, I ran with the project.
So you would not struggle with the workload down in KwaZulu-Natal, would you?
I've been working there. I started there in July in person. I haven't found myself struggling, and I think the JP, when she comes to ask me some questions, it is adaptation. And I think any change needs time for adaptation. But I wouldn't call that a struggle because they've got different work systems. I must say, incredible infrastructure and support, and the fact that I can be at home helps me a hell of a lot because I don't have to manage a lot and I can just concentrate on either getting to Pietermaritzburg or getting to Durban and just sitting down and doing my work. So
And it's working out well for you.
I love it. I'm sorry to say this, but I really do love it.
Why are you sorry?
No,
Right.
I'm like, most people probably don't understand that there are two elements to it. Obviously, I'm closer to my doctors and I get the help that I need, and then I'm at home. But most people don't understand that from 1994, I made a decision, or my late husband and I made a decision to create a home for our children. And regardless of where I would have been in the world, KZN was my home. And KZN, that's where I established my illustrious practice, if I dare say. And KZN gave me a lot. KZN gave me the foundation to be where I am today. And it's like a whole T.S. Eliot thing. I've traveled everywhere, and then I've come to where it all started from a personal legal practice point of view. And so I love that I'm able to be there and at least share what I know to the extent needed. I'm really grateful even for the opportunity to, I go there willingly, I go there happily.
All right. Judge President Boyot.
Thank you, CJ. Good afternoon, Judge Siwendu.
Good afternoon, JP.
I wanted to say, when you were saying it all started there and it gave you an illustrious career, I wanted to say, but watatwa li then you were taken by Gauteng. So I'm sure we will be pleased to, if this body agrees, to welcome you back.
Not to talk down Gauteng, but not all that is gold glitters. You know, so.
And when you said,
careful now, the Gautengers sitting
Yeah,
around this
I
table.
know, I'm not saying, no, they mustn't take it personally, but honestly, I mean it in my case, at least. Not all that is gold that glitters, definitely.
yes, you've been in KZN now for about 10, 11 weeks.
Yes.
That's just more than a term. How have you found the division? You've sat both in Durban and Pietermaritzburg.
Yes, it runs differently. There's no question about it. Initially, I thought, well, the first offender for efficiencies is the RAF, and I think that is experienced by the courts across the country, across centers, and it clogs the role unnecessarily. There are obvious differences in that KZN doesn't have the volume that Gauteng judges experience, and that's really truth on the numbers. For example, you run a combined role in terms of motion court, so you will do both unopposed and opposed matters and urgent matters when you are assigned as a judge that week. And I'd been talking to one of the senior judges about it. Because of the volumes, there's no justification to allocate, for example, a single judge to hear urgent matters at all. So all the work gets done there. It took me a little bit of time to try and adjust to that, but there is some logic to it. And there's also just the use of technology is obviously not as ahead as Johannesburg or Gauteng has. We're so used to working off cotton line and case lines, and sometimes there is resistance to change. One needs to be sensitive towards that. But I think with a little bit of change management, people will start to see the value in using technology, because I could have had all my files for next week in my computer with me and read them in between, instead of thinking I must carry the paper files and so on. So those are just the broad differences. There is obviously work that I wasn't used to that I am now doing. There's the mental health reviews and petitions. They come in any time, but they're not a problem at all. And lastly, there's just the feel of the court. I attribute it to how it's led. I've got no idea what you as the leader of the court go through on a day-to-day basis, but the feel is settling to my nervous system, and it enables me to want to do more, want to give.
Thank you for that. And how have my colleagues been towards you?
So because there are traditions in that court.
And you can't talk about our Thursday traditions.
Oh.
You can talk about others. I'm joking.
No, there are traditions, and I think for me this is where conscious female leadership has incredible value, because it must have taken thinking and effort to ensure that colleagues gather every morning together for tea before you start. And that space, and in fact it's compulsory, it's not optional. All of us come around tea. And that is the space to share developments, to share what the problems are and what's coming in the week, what's hitting us in the coming week. And it's like very useful. And then we've got a compulsory lunch together on Thursdays. And it's very intimate. And it's really very human. And we celebrate Heritage Day by marking the multicultural nature of our nation, coming together, bringing our traditional food. I thought that was like absolutely wonderful. And maybe it's just the benefit of having a smaller court that you can rally the troops to do that. But it takes awareness and thinking of how to bring people together and how to create a field where, you know, you can come in, not be anxious about your work, and knowing that you can lean on your colleagues when it's needed. And I'm not going to talk about the other parts because you've stopped me.
And I can just put it on record that in the 10 weeks or 11 weeks that you have been in KZN, you have not reported sick on any day. So I'm comfortable that you will be able to cope if this body agrees to recommend you to move to KZN.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at my stats, I don't know if you've got it. I mean, if you've looked at my stats, I probably disposed of more than 230, 300 motions. You assigned me a special motion on day one. The judgment is out. I've done urgent court matters in between when I was sitting in opposed motion. And I sort of have a tradition, and I think it's a Joburg tradition, that if you do give an order, even if the matter is small, do give some reasons. And I've probably given 5 reasons over and above a big special motion, which is out. I can't see myself not. I love working, and maybe too much. I can't see myself not doing it under the right conditions. And you make those conditions easy. You make me want to give.
And then lastly, thank you for that. And then lastly, Judge Siwendu, in Gauteng, as well as KZN, your average is about 2-3 months. What is the secret, particularly when you're based in Joburg?
Well, the secret is that you're going to make big mistakes sometimes. And you are really going to want to hide under your desk. Where matters are not, I think the call for 3 months for complex matters is, it really needs to be relooked at. And I think there was some conversation around that. The idea is to have that space to read ahead. And it's absolutely invaluable because by the time you get to the parties, you've distilled exactly what the issues are. And then you don't sit on the judgment, even if it's difficult. So sometimes you can write 3 judgments, 4 judgments, all on a rolling roll at one go. So that by the time the one is finished, because it is like a conveyor belt, it just never stops. But for complex matters, one needs more time to step back from the matter. And there is a writer's block sometimes, you know, especially when you are confronted with the new territory. First, you've got to get to know what is the underbelly, and then you can sometimes write. I'm not speaking for colleagues in this sense, but I can imagine anyone who's involved in creative writing would understand that sometimes you can freeze when you are confronted with an area of law that you've not been exposed to, for example. So you need a little bit of time. And I think most of the time parties are understanding. But you've got to communicate to the parties. You don't sit in a corner and at the hour off say, oh, by the way, you know. So, yeah, it's a lot of risk taking. And sometimes you make errors and you've got to forgive yourself for those. But you just carry on and not sit on matters.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, JP. Premier?
Thank you, CJ. No, I have no question.
Commissioner Matoro Hlepo?
Thank you, CJ. Good afternoon, Siwendu.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
It's such
Matolo
refreshing. It's so refreshing to see you back here. And I was just reading the comments by the law bodies
Yes.
about your work ethic, that you can't cope. I just wanted to highlight to them that they must thank you for being a vanguard to making sure that the Legal Practice Act is what it is now.
I'm glad somebody remembers. I'm glad because we had very heated, difficult debates in the National Forum for the transformation of the legal profession. I'm glad someone remembers that because it's easy to forget.
So I just wanted them to know that we appreciate you.
Thank you.
JP Tlalezi?
Thank you, Chief Justice, and good afternoon, Justice Wendy.
Good afternoon, JP Tlalezi.
Yeah, just a little about the general traditions of the judiciary.
Yes.
Yeah. When you are in KZN, you are an acting judge despite the experience and everything that you've got.
Yes.
I wonder whether you made some research on this. Now, if you were to be transferred or appointed there, how is it somehow going to affect the rankings in that court? Might it not cause some problems that the JP may have to deal with?
I understood that once a judge, always a judge.
Yes.
And I understood that, at first, I was called AJ. Call me what you like. It's not something that really bothered me. But my 8 years in the judiciary is not going to be erased just because I'm now moving on to another court. So if I am accepted, I will fit in appropriately in terms of rank. There is no rule that says otherwise, but all that is regulated is just the process of the lateral transfer, and which requires me to come before the JSC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Siwendu. You're excused.
Thank you, Commission. Thank you, CJ.